Bob, tell me about this ash right here.
Okay.
Bob Leverett is an old growth forest expert.
If you go back to George Emerson's 45 book on trees and shrubs of Massachusetts, he was sent forward by the Governor General of Massachusetts at the time to document all of the tree species because the state was being rapidly cleared.
Right.
And they wanted the information. So Emerson did a fantastic job.
Stand by
He talked about the ash trees in western Massachusetts as just being, on a different scale. This would have been the kind of ash tree that would have excited George Emerson. It's 12 foot in circumference, and it's best I can do. I'll have to wait until around November when all the leaves are off to get a better height. It might make 140 feet. It's certainly 139 in a fraction.
And you think this is the tallest ash in Ice Glen?
Oh no.
No.
That's where I want to find.
Okay.
Go back and find the ash tree that I went over 140 on a number of years ago.
And what do you think the approximate age of this tree is?
Well, that's a good question. I would guess that it's probably 180 or more years old.
Okay.
I don't know that for sure, but it certainly looks. It has, this is
And there's another ash.
Oh yeah, these are fantastic. The ash tree, the white ash, that's Fraxinus americana, as opposed to the green ash, which is Fraxinus pennsylvanicum. The white ash is the tallest hardwood in Massachusetts. And if you were to look at different internet sources that describe its size, they would generally be describing basically a younger tree, and they'd say maybe 100 feet or something like that. These ash trees, they sneer at 100 feet. They're uniformly up at above 120. The canopy of the ash trees in Ice Glen is between 120 and about 135, and that puts them equal to, or at least second to, Mohawk Trail State Forest. And Mohawk doesn't have an ash to equal this one. This is this tree was also dedicated by yours truly here to Dr. Susan Messino from Trinity College and Dr. Joan Maloof, who has the Old Growth Forest Network. And so I have a picture of them. Maybe I sent it to you.
I think you did, yes.
Yeah, I thought I did. Susan was on that side of the tree and Joan was on this side of the tree. And so they said they would send money to have the tree treated.
Oh, good.
So
Excellent.
maybe it can be an offset if it's already been done with other funds. At least you'll have.
Well, they'll leave more for the hemlocks.
Right, that's like where we credit that one.
And Joan is just fabulous. Well, both of them are. But
And this right here is a
sugar maple.
sugar maple. So that's simply the moss that gets on them.
It does. And there was a lady that actually she was from Smith College originally. There, and then she went to work for Harvard Forest. And they called her the moss lady. And she studied mosses, and she identified several species of mosses. Doesn't hurt the tree, that really go for and bond with sugar maple. And so I started really paying attention to the degree to which older sugar maples.
I think it's the pancake variety of moss, or is it waffle? I'm not sure which. Now listen, can you re-explain just for my video why the pines become doubles and triples with the weevil?
In an open field, the white pine weevil actually reduced this species from the most valuable timber species in the world at once upon a time, because it kills the upward growing leader, and that's what's genetically programmed to go another internode every year and go straight up. So you get the straight trunks that you see. When that happens, then if it happens really young, then 2 or 3 of the what otherwise would be limbs act as trunks.
Right.
And they become multi-trunked that look like that. If it happens a little later, those limbs are fully developed as limbs, and then you get this multi-trunk, but the the trunks are wavy. They're not really that straight.
Interesting.
You see both in here, but you see plenty of great straight trunk white pines. This is also a key, woody component of a mature forest are snags. And they're great wildlife trees, and they stand fairly long
Like this.
in the forest if they're white pines. They won't stand that long if they're sugar maples. The sugar maple comes apart pretty quickly in 30, 40 years. It's gone.
And how long do you think this one's been here?
Golly. I would have to imagine 25 or more years,
Oh, interesting.
and maybe longer.
Now, how do you know the difference between the red pine and the white pine?
Well, they look very different. Plus, the needles are different.
Are you looking at that's a white pine?
All these are white
All
pines.
these are white pines.
The red pine has 2 needles per fascicle,
Okay.
and the white pine has 5.
Right. We're not seeing any needles on these trees where you were recognizing that.
Well,
where you were identifying it.
the bark of the red pine is kind of reddish
Okay, that's what I want
and
to.
plated.
Yes.
And we dated. Ted Zebrick dated a 210-year-old red pine up on the side of the Glen on the Laurel Tower, the Laurel Tower side.
At 210, I bet his date didn't get around much.
Pardon me?
I said at 210, I bet his date didn't get around much.
No.
You said he dated him. Yeah, that was a joke. A really bad joke.
Oh yeah. A delayed laugh is better than no laugh at all.
When you have to explain your jokes, you know they're bad.
Now here are 2 more hickories. There's the shag.
All right, now wait, let's get that. This one here is a
Yeah.
shag.
And you can see that if you look up, you can see the big bark plates spread out in a
Mhm.
direction, and they fan out at the bottom.
And so now the shags can get very tall, but don't get so wide.
That's right.
Mhm.
They grow very tall. They'll top the oaks by often 10 feet, sometimes 15, but you'll never see them as really big.
And
trees.
these are shagbark hickory nuts.
Right.
There we go.
And honey, why don't you tell them what these little holes are?
And what do these taste like again?
Well, Gil Gibbons
Gil Gibbons
always
liked them.
talked about this. Tastes like wild hickory,
That's what we said.
and I don't know what he was tasting, but it's kind of a sweet.
Yeah.
It's a
Like
pleasant.
hickory, it's like a smoked hickory.
It's
So
sapsucker,
that's what I'm saying. I've seen
yellow-bellied
this-
sapsucker.
Exactly. I had yellow-bellied sapsuckers on my birch trees.
And how much damage is that
They
doing?
kill the trees.
I mean,
or
no.
well.
Well, eventually they're taking insects out at this point in time.
Right.
I think usually when I see that many holes, it really reflects the tree
And this is a
hickory.
it's a hickory. Okay.
What kind? Pig?
That I'm trying to think between pig and mocker nut.
Pig nut or rock nut?
Those are different kinds of hickories.
Or red. It could be a red
Or red
hickory up here.
Mhm. Right.
It's not shag.
I'm gonna have to wait and get, if we could get one of the leaves. It's compound leaf, so it's got leaflets, but
Mhm.
you count them. And if it's 5, then you're usually talking about pig nut or you're talking about shagbark.
Mhm.
And if it's 7, you're probably talking about mocker nut. But none have come down here.
Interesting.
We'll get you an ID on this tree, since it's right on the trail. And here's another one.
And this also is another
Oddly
hickory.
enough, they often do this sort of thing. Knobby, where they've started to grow sprouts and they've died back. Oddly enough, you get that out of the hickories.
Mm-hmm.
And up there, I would say is more of a card-carrying shagbark.
And what are all these little saplings here?
These saplings are striped maple, Acer pennsylvanicum.
What's that?
Acer pennsylvanicum, or striped maple. It's a
Okay.
little understory tree. It will grow into 40, 50 feet high and
Interesting.
sometimes more. But it's basically it helps to create well, carpet's not the right word, but a layer of green. It protects the forest floor. They're deer. It's a browse related. For wildlife, it's a fairly good wildlife tree. Browse for deer and moose, if you have them.
It's called moosewood because moose like it.
Interesting.
Yeah. There's usually 4 or 5 different. Now, this right here, is a rich woods indicator. Every time I see that's blue cohosh. And if you
That's
see
blue cohosh. And what is that? Is that a tree or is it a bush?
Oh no, it's just a ground plant. It's a
Okay.
little vascular.
And why is that a
Because it signals that
Indicator.
there's calcium in the soil.
okay?
And where you get that, you get calcium, and then you get an explosion of green.
So it's a positive indicator of health.
Calcium.
Yeah.
As opposed to, so it's a base, it's an alkaline
Opposed to
or
acidic.
neutral, but in here more neutral, as opposed to acid. Because once you get the acid soil, then everything is virtually bare ground and needles.
And with the, are climate change impacts affecting the acidity of the soil?
Affecting
I
the
mean, acidity of the soil. I mean, everyone would talk about acid rain when I was a kid.
Yeah.
You know, back
Well,
in
that
the
was
90s
because
when I was
that was
young.
because of sulfur dioxide and whatnot coming out of smokestacks
Yeah.
from Ohio and places like that. I don't know. I cannot give you a good answer to that question as to whether there is any kind of acidification that would be associated with CO2. I don't know of any. Now, there we start to pick up the hemlock over there. The first one right through there.
Yep.
And the mix in here, hemlock is not associated generally with rich woods. So it has to compete with species that like rich woods, like sugar maple. And so this
And
is
define rich wood for me.
a lot of minerals, about 5 or 6 different minerals in the soil, enough moisture, and when you get that, in particular when you get calcium, then you get a lot of ground plants that like and need those minerals. So you get this explosion of growth on the ground. If you don't have that, then the ground layer tends to be a little bit bare.
Okay. There's another ash, right? I'm getting there.
Yeah, they have that lighter bark.
Yep. And what is next to the ash? Is that another?
Pine.
That's another pine.
It's just a pine. And these 2 big bruisers here, of course, are pines.
And what about the third one there?
Which is
That's,
the
oh yeah, I think that's got to be a pine too.
the big one.
Yeah, that big one.
Yeah, you won't get any. The pines are the giants. Now, see, this is that weave I was talking about.
Yeah, beautiful.
It's kind of a weave pattern. I think of it as a diamond-shaped weave. And when you see that, it's a help. It helps. It's diagnostic as to what the bark looks like. And you know, and then as the bark grows, now the bark's big, when it starts sloughing off, then it tends to be a different pattern. And a lot of people looking at bark, sometimes they get confused about what is, in terms of diagnostics, they may see the lack of bark because it's fallen off, and then they start trying to identify the tree through the lack of bark. You gotta be careful.
Now, are we coming up on that really tall shagbark hickory?
It's a ways yet.
Oh, okay.
Now this one here, this big bruiser here, white pine, of course, it surprised me. The first time I ever really saw it, of course, it went down across the trail and was appropriately cut. But if you look, and that gave us a chance to look at the growth rings. Look at the growth rings in here. They're really, really fast. And so if I put, this is an inch, so I put there, it's about four growth rings in an inch. So that's fast. But look how big it is.
Right.
So you can't
You can
just
see all the rings
food.
right here. So
Yeah.
you're saying like
Yeah, those are even.
those are even wider.
Yeah, there's 1, 2, 3.
So it's not that old, even
No.
though it's big.
No, it's not. This tree grew like nothing. I mean, just phenomenal growth.
Happy tree.
And it's hard to, there's a lot of fast growth in the Houstonic River Valley.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a tree growing mecca.
But I have a question. When you were saying the bark is dead,
Yeah.
but it's all
Outer bark.
the outer. So, but on all of these trees, is the outer bark?
Dead.
It's dead.
The inner bark, the cambium layer, there's a layer of live cells that's bark and live cells that are wood. And that's where the action takes place year to year. But once you get outside of that, that bark is dead.
So, but is all this bark dead? Like the bark that we
On
see?
the outside, yeah.
It's all. Oh, that's
Yeah.
interesting.
And it stays on the tree for a long, long period of time. But eventually, it'll start flaking off. And then you get patterns where you see it'll be bald. And look at the hemlock over here. You see how it's flaked off on
Yep,
the left-hand
right.
side, but it's thick on the right-hand side.
So this isn't a sign of disease. This is just the way the bark works.
Yeah. It's not a disease.
Interesting.
This tree here, I'm sure, will have to be treated, a lot.
Right.
But, if you look too, there's a white pine and there's a hemlock. Now, if you're trying to describe those barks with words, it doesn't work. So people for years put out tree identification guides and they would write paragraphs. How brown is brown, how furrowed is furrowed, etc. What's the pattern? And they'll go into great detail and you can't understand it. One picture literally worth their 1,000 words. Then you can decide which tends to be browner, and you can look at the hemlock and just let your eye look at it. You pick up a grayish bit. Monica, you can help me better because you usually see the tree through a second set of eyes. But the white pine is often a grayish brown, little streaks in it.
And
The
this one
tree-
is
Yeah, my eyes are just discriminating. Yeah.
Oh,
Black
yeah,
birch.
That's black birch.
and is this birch beer?
That's birch beer.
Alrighty.
And
And how do you make birch beer? Is it sort of like maple syrup? You put a tap in?
I think so.
Yeah.
And I think they're doing that more and more up in Canada.
Jonathan's doing it right here in Ice Glen. He's made birch beer.
Yeah.
He's topped his birch trees and he's made some birch syrup.
Does he have a
and some
permit? I
maple-
think in Stockbridge you need a permit.
No, I don't know anyone who's doing that.
I'm kidding.
I know, and I know my friend. I don't talk about anybody or anything because
I don't think you can make alcohol. Oh wait, birch beer is not.
It's just syrup. don't delete that from your thing.
If it's a conservation area, you're not supposed to.
We're just kidding. No, you don't need any permits.
Okay.
Okay, now this tree over here is another black birch.
Yes.
Oh, I'm getting good
you're
at this.
getting it. You're
That's a
getting it.
black birch
Getting
tree,
the
folks.
idea.
Which one?
And this one
This
is a
one
little
there?
bit
There.
younger. You see
That's
the bark
beautiful,
plates
yeah.
are more
Beautiful.
intact.
Yep.
See, the bark is elastic. So as it stretches, it eventually splits.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but based upon the genetics of the bark, it'll split in different ways, sometimes in strips, sometimes eventually into little platelets. So as this species really gets old, they become platelets.
Right. And is that sort of what we're seeing here, or is that?
Well, this one is probably about 60 years old.
And so when we go see, show me one where you're considered platelets.
Okay, I'll try to find
We
one.
haven't had one yet.
Yep.
Right, we haven't seen one yet. I find these downed pines with their root structures really magic. It's like a kind of a magic forest look.
Now, is it true that the trees sort of, not communicate might be too strong a word, but with the fungus in the soil that
Oh,
they
they do.
create networks and
Oh yeah, absolutely.
and what sort of the
They feed one another,
right?
and it's more complex than that. Suzanne Simard has written the book, The Mother Tree,
Right.
and it really details how trees communicate underground very well. This, by the way, that tree you asked me way back there, Patrick, and I said it was a striped maple.
Right.
Now here's a striped maple.
Few of
Interesting.
them right there too.
Yeah. Notice the green bark that photosynthesizes.
Really?
This bark,
So the bark acts like a leaf.
it does. And it allows that tree to grow more rapidly, quickly. They're not long lived, 70, 80 years maybe.
No.
Whoops.
So she'll come back.
Yeah.
Here's a black birch that's
Oh.
got a younger bark, but it's
Now what caused that?
well, it's got some kind of fungus. But you can see the bark is more intact.
Mhm.
You can see where it's starting to split up on the sides. So you were looking at a more advanced level of that breakup further down the
Right.
trail. Now here's a change. Now, Monica, this is one of Monica's favorite trees in all the forest species. I mean, and that's yellow birch.
Oh, how beautiful.
Now it also has oil of wintergreen in the twigs, but it's not as concentrated as that in the black birch. On the other hand, this was Henry David Thoreau's favorite birch, and he said the gold of the yellow birch is more valuable than all the gold in Sutter's Mill. He made that statement. I guess a lot of people would have disagreed with him on that, but it really shows. And notice the peels, as opposed to a white birch where you'd have big peels. The peels are very small, and they curl up. And this one prefers more water than the black birch, so you'll find it more in areas where there's available groundwater.
And so do the birches put out sort of like a seed that is on a feather, sort of a wing almost.
Well, it's not a wing; it's just tiny,
Right.
and it floats down, and it can't penetrate into the duff layer. So where they tend to seed will be on stumps and tip-up mounds. We'll find.
And so what's an example of a seed? Can we see any here? Are these?
Possibly.
The winged seeds are maples.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, the things that you put on your nose?
Along with a really good interpretive law in which we factor that in. You know,
Yeah.
seeds, the shape of the seeds. Here's another red maple. By the way, you know, red maple, you can make syrup out of the red maple. Maple syrup out of red maple
Oh,
too.
really? I have
It's not as concentrated, but in Canada, where it might be more prevalent, it has always been another. All of the maples have sweet sap.
So the sugar maples are in jeopardy, but the red maples are okay right now with
Well,
the
the
climate
sugar
change?
maples are, it's kind of a tipsy they've had a pear thrip in the past, a little beast that attacked them, but they're not in great danger. The big question is, with global warming, how's the sap going to
Yeah,
behave?
honey, tell them about. This is an example of what he was just talking about, where
Now there's a beautiful yellow
a seed
birch.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah.
got on
Go ahead.
top of the duff on top of the rock and was able to take hold. I guess it's a rock.
Yep.
And there's a yellow birch. And this one is more gold.
Yeah.
So you can see what Thoreau was talking about.
Yeah, that was what really excited him.
Yeah, that gold color.
Beautiful.
Okay. Henry David, we don't know what to think.
Boy, it's so fun, but so buggy.
Oh, it is buggy today. It's buggier than. I
Yeah,
think
with all
it's
the water.
rain. The rain has.
Yeah, all the rain.
Water.
It's so amazing.
Yeah, I know. How about it? Stick with me. So that's another yellow birch, right? Right here?
Yeah,
I mean the dead one?
Yeah, the dead one, yeah.
sprouting.
Yeah.
And it's not that good.
Yeah, it's got like little sprouts coming out. Yeah.
That's always so exciting when you can sprout like that. Yeah, this is where it starts getting pretty funky. Just the other day. Yeah, I think I went this way the other day.
Oh, come on. You don't want to squish? I like the squish.
Whoops.
Who's living in there?
Somebody needs to come here with a chainsaw.
It would be nice to have a geologist give us a readout on the geology.
I know a geologist. You know David DeChair in Williamstown? He was the geologist at Williams College. He just retired.
I know.
Who was the
other
guy at the other-
Paul,
Paul what?
I don't think
There was another Williams College geologist that talked about the Moortown Formation at Mohawk.
I can ask him if he wants to take a walk here sometime with you. Would you like that?
yeah, absolutely. It's nice to throw in that kind of thing to both
Right.
and to know what's chemically inside the rocks.
Right. He would know all of that. He really studied
Do you
acid rain and all of, leads the Williamstown trips, all different places. And
What is the guy's name that we keep quoting?
I know it's Paul, but the
Paul
name
what?
that's what's not come to me yet.
It's Italian, I think. Carabinos.
and also Williams College.
Yeah.
And retired or working?
Well, no, he's working. He's an avant-garde geologist who helped come up with the explanation of what the Moortown Formation, how it began, which was part of, it created a microcontinent that floated, the Gondwana land broke up on this, and floated up into the area where you have that formation, and it included parts of what is now Indonesia, Africa, and Australia.
That's his theory. We don't know whether it's totally accepted
I don't know.
or not.
I haven't. He's sticking by it. I was told that.
And your geologist friend's name is?
His name is David DeChair, but it's D-E-T-H-I-E-R. It sounds like a French Dethier. But it's DeChair is how you pronounce it.
Okay.
But I worked with his wife, Nancy Nyland, for 30-something years at CBC.
On your left, Bob, is what?
This yellow birch.
Yellow birch, really?
Yeah. But
Then there's an elongated thing, right? Split, like up there,
I'm sorry.
like in the one you were talking about the bark, an elongated.
Oh yeah, it's splitting up. Right. Now this area up in here has plenty of 250-year-old trees.
Mm-hmm.
Right up that.
Can I have a little peek?
Right, as you go up the steep hill.
Me too. They
pretty.
just attacked me.
Wait,
Yeah, they once they discover us, then they.
Oh, it's
They're
pretty.
under it.
It's
Talk to
getting
each
really
other.
bad. This is the worst
The
it's
trees
been.
talk to each other. The bugs really talk to each other.
Mm-hmm.
They normally like me, and so I get
Well,
a
he
lion's
loves
share. If they're
sugar.
bothering Monica, we're in trouble.
Yeah, they're bothering me, and we are in trouble because they bother him and they don't bother me, but there's just too many.
My niece, who was she worked on like outdoor crews, and she's like a bug magnet. Everyone wanted her on their crew.
Now,
Because they
now,
welcomed her.
Yeah, right.
Karen, come on.
maybe we can cut across here.
Yeah, I think
Look for those.
the one that the biggest one is.
It's not a big. It's really small, but it's really
Oh.
tall.
Oh, what?
And that's over here?
Yeah.
We've seen it, Patrick.
I know. I just want to get on the video.
Oh, okay.
I mean, you don't have to go through the. Okay. Hmm? Now, the tree directly in front of you, Bob, what is that? With the really craggy bark.
Well, that's another yellow. Birch.
Another yellow birch.
We're up here in the wet zone now.
Right.
And that's where you pick it up. Okay. You see more of them. There's a yellow over there. There's a yellow there.
You know,
What we were seeing below is the black. Now you see the yellow.
it's amazing how quiet it is to walk on the dust.
Oh yeah. And look at the roots of the yellow birch are artistic.
Mm-hmm.
They spread out in all directions, create their own little worlds. The monarch pine is over there. That's that 12.8 foot circumference. Second largest one.
Whoops.
Oh, what's where you're going?
Second largest black pine in the United States.
The largest being the Iceland one.
Right, yeah. Now this is, sort of in between. We've got now a mix of second growth and old growth characteristics. And here, for example, this hemlock here, great tree. Oh, I just saw a deer flying up there. I think she did too.
I think the deer knew that she was there.
Louie, this way. This way.
You might be out playing with it.
Well, I leave it up to you all. We're going to be fighting bugs. How much bugs do you want to fight? Are you all okay, or
I wouldn't mind a little more video, but it's up to you.
We're leaving it up to you.
If I think we 5 for 10 more minutes, 2 minutes. I don't care.
Sure.
Where's the hickory?
It's down that way.
Oh, it is. All right.
I'm going to swing down to it.
All right. Well, we're following you.
Do we want to go farther, closer to the Glen or not?
It's almost there. It's 50 feet.
If I did, I'd want to go up that way. Well,
Oh, well, you decide. I am neutral.
we can. Well, what do you?
Well, we're very close.
We've had a great visit. We can do this again. Let's sort of head back and we'll try to walk by the hickory.
Yeah, this is a great hemlock here. I want to get back in the fall and measure.
Which
I think
one?
It's up there around 120 something feet.
This one right here?
Yeah, I'd say there's at least two in here that go over 130, and that's as tall as hemlocks get. The actual tallest hemlock in New England is up there in the
Really?
not doing well, but it's at the low spot in the Glen as you go through it,
Right.
and it's on the right hand side of the trail.
All right. We're sitting ducks when we sit.
Yeah. I hear you. We'll make a circle around and come back around.
Yeah, I've never walked up that way. We can do that too,
I'm
Patrick.
having more sympathy when I complain. This is the first time that I've actually been bothered. Usually I'm not bothered. When there are bugs. Oh, this isn't the place that has the birch roots that Mitch likes so much, is it?
Yeah. It may be.
No, they're not. They were crossing. Or maybe, well, actually, look, there it is.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Look at that. Yeah, please, yeah.
You usually don't see that kind of root structure above ground. It's really quite extraordinary.
One of our friends is a world-class art photographer, Mitch Epstein. He has his work in untold numbers of important, great places. He fell in love with Ice Glen.
Yeah.
Maybe we could get him to show some of his work in the
Yeah, let's do a
museum.
gallery thing.
And the Stockbridge art, this library is a
Well,
beautiful.
we don't know. This guy is on the top of the pecking order in the art world, so
Mhm.
I don't know.
Well, if he loves it here, maybe he wants to help us save it.
Yeah. Well, he might. He might. We took him here, and the Glen was. It was a month ago, 6 weeks ago. It was right after a huge amount of rain, and the rain had finally stopped, and we walked into the Glen, and it was just so magical. So magical. And he went crazy. And he was supposed to go back to New York the next morning. He got up at 5 in the morning so he could come back here because he didn't have his camera. And he
Wow, what a beautiful time. Take it. Now, why are there nail holes in there? What is?
Oh, there's a big question.
Well, this,
Oh, there's a thing.
Yeah.
I think they had I believe they had the hunting blind.
Yep.
Exactly.
Don't anymore.
Right. Horizontal hunting blind. Oh. She wants to say hi to you.
Yeah. We can see, Will had taken some pictures here because he loved it.
Watch out.
Well, we're going to talk
I wish
to
Sadie
him
had come.
soon.
She would have had a good
We're
time.
going to see him, and we'll ask him if there might be an opportunity to display Ice Glen.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure in town hall or at a library or other places. It's beautiful. That would be fantastic.
If you
Well, we
do,
can see. We don't know enough
know,
about,
Yeah. Oh no, we're not. And we know you can't commit on his behalf.
We just read.
Yeah, well, we can ask him, and
And I'll ask
he'll
David.
find a polite way to say no.
Yeah, that we're trying to save it. If that will work for him, that's great. If it doesn't, we understand.
Yeah.
Period. And I'm going to ask David the same thing.
Great.
As a geologist, I don't know if there's a season that makes sense or how often you can come back.
I can come back. Well, I'm retired. And,
Yeah.
This
So
is
is
one
We
of
come
the,
here a lot.
So,
this is
okay.
one of the great places on the planet to me. So
Great, okay. And I don't know if he's been here, so I think that would be fascinating. You would both love it. He's a scientist.
Do you want to do anything with your carbon film here?
One of the films that Ray Aslan and I have been contemplating is to do a film on forests and carbon.
Mm-hmm.
Places where you have lots of it above ground, lots of it underground, lots of it below. Ice Glen would be either way.
You're not doing anything very exciting.
No.
You're just researching and sharing. You're sharing information about this.
Using it as an illustration.
Yeah, I think education is a very important part of this world. That's a big part of it.
Mm-hmm. Alrighty.
It's frustrating. I know a lot of my friends in the department kind of get frustrated because academics come here. We don't ask for permission and they do studies.
Right.
And it's out there. And a lot of it would be very valuable for you all to have.
Right.
And anything that we would do that you gave us permission for, then you would of course get copies of everything.
Well, I just think it's great that people take an interest in it. I mean, it's public land. Nobody needs our permission to go on it.
Yeah, but
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know what you're
I
saying.
don't like to abuse Now this is just a phenomenal area of carbon. Because we're talking about trees and scraping the sky up there. So there's a lot of carbon. And this big beast here, this is the monarch pine. It's probably,
You're saying it's the biggest pine in the forest?
no. The ice Glen on the other side is the biggest one.
Oh, okay.
This is the second biggest ice Glen pine in this forest.
Yeah. Sweetie, do you, the only way that you're ever gonna go near the Ice Glen Pine is if you can park on that road.
Yeah.
I'm sure I can get you permission to park
That would
up
be
high.
great.
Yeah.
I'm gonna, just for your filmmaking, your video there, Patrick, I'll
Look
take
at this.
the circumference again of it. So you have a picture of it happening. I've measured this tree off and on for 20 years. It has continually grown. You know, it's not growing at a super rate, but it is growing. And
I'm gonna hold one of it.
no,
Pardon?
it's got a hook.
Oh,
So it illustrates that these bigger older trees don't quit growing as is sometimes thought. I mean, eventually they die, so they don't grow forever. And they do slow down, but they continue, but a little growth on a tree this big adds to a lot of absolute growth.
you get a sense of how giant it is as you go around it. Okay, let's have a guess. What's the number gonna be? I'm saying 160.
Okay, now we go
Oh, no.
there. 12.8. Actually, yeah, 12.8.
That's 152. I was a little over. No Price is Right rules.
Okay, now 12 point. Now here is the hickory.
This one.
Right.
So you have the monarch pine right next to the
What did I do? Oh,
The tallest hickory, this is?
tallest hickory
I'm
in.
going to redo it if you all will kind of stand and squat maybe for a little while.
Okay.
This is, to my knowledge, the tallest shagbark hickory in New England.
Wow. Hear that, folks? Tallest in New England.
Did
There we
you
go.
hear that, Shaggy?
Yeah.
You are the champ, the tall champ.
All right.
I came here
Look at that moss.
less sophisticated equipment, good, but less sophisticated. And today I have LaserTech Incorporated 2.200H. The two lasers, one is a red beam class 2 phase-based laser, accurate to plus or minus a millimeter and a half.
So go use it.
Got it.
I want to know what your point five
This isn't Best Buy. This is Ice Glen.
Blue.
Where did you meet?
Bob and I. I was, looking at ads to meet somebody, and I met this guy who was a forester. He looked like he might have been a good match for me because he liked nature and canoeing and stuff. But turned out that we became friends, but not anything more. But he was coming, he lived in Vermont, he was coming down to visit me. We were starting to get to know each other. And he had his friend Bob, who just lost his wife, and he was really worried about him and all this, because Bob really took it hard.
Yes.
So he decided that we would be a good
Better
match.
fit, yeah.
But Bob's wife had died in December, and we were talking it was February or March. It's too
Very
early,
close,
way
too
too
soon.
early. So he waited a year, and then he got Bob to come to one of my concerts, and Bob came back, and he looked like death warmed over. He really, I knew who he was because I never went on his hikes because it always said you have to be in good shape because it's off trail and steep terrain, and I wouldn't have said, I wasn't sure that I was in good enough shape to go on one of his hikes, so I never did. But I knew who he was, and I used to look for his name when there was stuff on Old Growth. But anyway, we met and talked on the phone, and he offered to take me for a walk in Mohawk Trail State Forest. So you do not turn down that kind of an offer from Bob Leverett, because that's incredible. I knew that was, no matter what I thought about him, you know. So as a mate, so we did that. We had about 3 dates, and we decided this was it. We were committing, and then he didn't care whether he got married again, but I wanted to get married, so we got married a year later, a few months. Yeah, so that was.
So good.
He liked classical music. That was why.
Okay.
We're going this way. Okay.
How long have you been married?
15 years.
Oh, so that's
Oh.
So we've known each other for 16 years.
yeah. Well, that gives me that's inspiration for me.
You lost your husband in 2014. Oh.
What was the measure? Just come over here. The trail's right here. So what was the measure?
I couldn't see it because this canopy's too thick.
Oh,
It's about, the last time I measured it was 135 feet tall.
so it's maybe 180 now.
That would make
Yeah, 60 and 70. I mean, all of it, there are people who are leaders, you know, whatever. But I've been fascinated seeing who is looking and how they describe themselves. So you could, you know, if you know somebody who has a subscription, check out.
that canopy is so high.
Yeah, I am going to give up my subscription because much as I love it, I can't read it.
Yeah.
I don't have time.
Yeah.
It's so, and then I just feel guilty.
All right, I think I'm officially ending this movie. Thank you, and we'll head back down. 48 minutes. So with commercials, will be exact hour.
Beautiful.